Hello, Kim Scribner joining you here again with Aniela and Gary in our latest edition of Coach's Corner. Gary's visiting us from an airport on the road, as consultants are at times. And here today, we're going to talk about the concepts of management by walking around and project management. So, Gary, I'm going to kick it over to you first. If you would share to us what management by walking around means for you.
Well, in its essence, it's pretty straightforward. You get off your duff and out of your office and go talk to people where they are. And I for a long time practiced this when leading teams, and I would make my daily round. High five folks, ask how they were doing. Might be an update for 30 seconds on a project. Might be to find out how a kid's play went at elementary school the night before. But just continually building and connecting the relationships that make for high trust and a lot of transparency. And that sort of physical activation on empathy and paying attention to the other members of the team, the other stakeholders, goes a long way in terms of keeping communication channels open.
Okay. As Aniela, you think about the concept of management by walking around and our now kind of inability to do the walking part of that. How would you kind of consider we apply that in a virtual or a hybrid work environment?
When I synthesize what Gary said into kind of like the project management element of it, it is that it's a sense-making tool. So in a hybrid work environment, it takes a little bit more effort and intentionality to make that sense, gauge the energy levels, to gauge motivation and morale, but it's not impossible. We have so many tools to our disposal, and it's not always just the scheduled stand up. It's not the check in. It's not just the status call, right? I feel like almost people perform for those. So it's so much more around the async, Slack, Teams message. Hey, how's it going? Watching whatever tool that we're using, whether it's Jira or Rike or Smartsheets or you name it, right? There is so much information that we can glean from that and communicate, right? Because to me, fundamentally, whether we're walking around or whether we're doing it in a hybrid fashion, it's all about sensing that both verbal and nonverbal communication.
Yeah, so I like that because it's the new walk around maybe is looking at not just the humans, but the artifacts of where they're capturing information, right? So we're using data and our observational capabilities in order to do that same thing that we did stopping by the water cooler or someone's desk previously in our new world.
I do think if I can just tack on also, the one thing that we do miss, unless we're really, really intentional about it, is managing and kind of nurturing those relationships. And that goes such a long way. It's easier to do when we're around the water cooler. It's much more difficult to do when we are async or if we're consultants jumping in to manage a project for our clients, right? So there is that extra element, that extra step to connect, to have little offside conversations and get to know the people, because fundamentally that's going to help us in the long run too.
Yeah. For either of you, what kind of tools, Gary, or techniques have you used to build those relationships virtually?
Well, it's interesting. Long before we had the pandemic, I dealt with global teams. I would have team members in places like Australia or parts of Europe. And then with COVID, we got even more comfortable with some of those tools. And, I think there's two elements here. One is leverage the technology you have available. So, in a previous corporate leadership role, I set up a group chat with all of my direct reports, and I'd ping them every morning. I'd ping them every morning because I couldn't walk around to see them all. And at one point, I had team members strewn across 6 different states here. And so the group chat became a clearinghouse for, whose birthday was it, or here's the priorities for the day, or even live streaming, like I'm in a leadership meeting, here are the themes that are coming out of it. That again was a proxy for actually stopping by somebody's desk. I think the other element, in addition to the technology, though, is individual sort of flexibility. I'll give an example. Had a team member based in Melbourne, Australia. I would do my one-on-ones at 10:30 at night from my dining room because that was first thing in the morning for him. And it was funny because, my then teenage kids got to know him on a first name basis and they loved it. They thought, this is fantastic. We've got a connection now on the other side of the planet. And it wasn't all that hard. It wasn't all that disruptive. Every week or so I spend 20 minutes, half an hour on the phone getting caught up. And that flexibility combined with the technology and the fact that we can talk on camera now with ease made for a pretty good proxy and still showed the behavior and the intention to pay attention, to reach out, to actually facilitate those bridging relationships, even if physically I couldn't, give somebody a fist bump.
Yeah. So as we think about taking the concepts of management by walking around and managing a project. So in this case, you're not the direct supervisor of individuals, but you're trying to lead an initiative that's important for an organization. It can be more challenging as a project manager to get people to do something because you're not necessarily the subject matter expert in that thing. And it can feel a lot like you're just asking for a status. So how can we use some of the concepts of management by walking around to amplify our project management capability?
I'll chime in here briefly. I think there's an element of intentionality that goes a long way in that space, because even if you're not directly managing somebody, you can, in a physical environment, you still have the adjacency to bump into somebody, getting a coffee, or bump into somebody as they're walking through the turnstile into the facility in the morning, that with technology and distance, you've got to compensate for. And so that's where pinging somebody with could be a cat video, could be a little bit of information or insight, but reaching across that divide and proactively building that connection. You may not get much of a response for the first 2 or 3, but the more consistent you are about checking in, about sharing your own informal updates, the more the feedback loop starts to play out. Because, psychologically, if somebody's sharing with me, I am more inclined to share with them. And that's a truism, whether we're together in person or, again, whether we're using sort of technical bridges to make those connections.
Aniela, anything to add there?
Yeah. So for me, project management is about detecting risks early and managing those risks, mitigating them. It's around creating stakeholder alignment to make sure that we are, yes, seeing all together what we need to see and marching in the same direction. And it's about communication, right? So going to what Gary just said, that communication loop, fostering that trust. So I'm going to give something to you, and then that reciprocity building, fostering that communication. I think just fundamentally, right, as much as we can do as project managers to trust people in that they are autonomous and that they are subject matter experts and that we have them on the project for a very good reason, right? Even that will go a length in helping build that trust, maintain and manage that communication so that it is ongoing, so that we can do our jobs in managing the risks and fundamentally getting the project across the finish line.
Yeah. And to just build on that, trust is absolutely fundamental to high performing teams, because in the spirit of project management, identifying risks, managing them, big part of it is being clear. Hey, when something is happening, hey, we've identified risks. Sometimes we may have missed a risk, but the ability to quickly disseminate, here's what's going on without fear of recrimination, and actually, that enables the team to then respond, to take and incorporate the information and do something positive with it. And that's where the communication element, the walking around, whether metaphorically or physically, it constantly reminds people, I'm in this with you. And that allows for much better sort of agility and effectiveness when the team collectively needs to do something, whether that's a positive opportunity or a negative threat. The response of the team is enabled and boosted immensely by that level of trust.
Yeah. So just to kind of summarize what I've heard you both talking through over the last few minutes here. So if we equate walking around with observing, with the acknowledgement that observing needs to have more intention behind it than when we were all in one physical location, however long ago that was for each of us as individuals. And at the end of the day, we're all humans, and this walking around, which is building connections, helps us build things together. And that's something that we all are trying to achieve, right? That sense of togetherness and accomplishing something together is what we're all after.
Yeah, after all, we're social critters, right? Being in it together feels good.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you both for your time today. As always, enlightening conversation. Look forward to future conversations.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gary.